All right, there are now just 2 days left of testing before the F1 teams have to pack up their cars and prepare for the Australian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton crashed out yesterday, and Jenson Button's McLaren spent most of the day in the garage as the drivers and the mechanics get to grips with the new cars. So lots still to be done out there. We're going to go live now to Rachel Brooks. She's in Bahrain for us. Rachel, what's been going on this morning?
But at the moment, not very much. Just a couple of cars out on track right now. I've got Ted Kravitz from Sky Sports F1 with me as the Mauritia goes past. But Ted, we've been looking at the Mercedes garage, which is busy inside, but not much activity outside this morning. They're having to change the engine for a precautionary measure, but it takes a lot longer this year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. On a slightly breezy and certainly very bright morning here in Bahrain. We've seen with these new cars and the new engines and turbos and energy recovery systems that in early stages of the team's understanding, it does take a long time. You need to change an engine. That can be up to 2 or 3 hours, whereas it could have been done in about 45 minutes last year in Formula One with the V8s. But I think in many things, like many things in life, these things tend to take the time that you have to do it in, and many of the teams were telling me yesterday that when we get to the races, and if they say to the mechanics, right, you've only got an hour and a half to do this, they will somehow manage to get it done in an hour and a half. In testing where we are now, if they've got the whole day, OK, they'll just take a bit longer about it. So no action from Mercedes, no action from Red Bull Racing as well. They haven't come out and told us why it is that they're not running yet. But this is really where testing starts to get serious, because we're seeing the top drivers and the team bosses all arrive today for the final 2 days of the test.
Yes, I mean, Sebastian Vettel gets back in the car for the final 2 days now, but Daniel Ricciardo yesterday seemed to have a better day. Red Bull managed 69 laps, more than they've done in the whole of pre-season testing so far, and he got the longest run-in that they've been able to do. But whereabouts are they now? Because the report's saying, oh, it's an improved situation for them, but let's face facts, they're still a long way behind, aren't they?
Yeah, it was the most laps that Red Bull have managed to do in a single day, of course, and they did the longest long run that they've done, just under 20 laps. So they're going to be wanting to do a race simulation. I think if Red Bull can go away from the final test of the winter with at least having done a race simulation, then that takes some of the pressure both off them internally as regards their reliability or their unreliability, and externally in terms of the media, people like us and the newspapers looking in on them and saying, what has happened to the world champions? You know, we'll change the regulations, but everybody thought they'd be better than this. And they showed some signs of that yesterday when they hit back at media reports through their website. Some signs that are getting irritated with perhaps some of the less than favourable coverage that they've been getting. But you know, if it's a sign of how highly they're held and how highly they're regarded in the F1 world, is that if they're not out there, top of the timesheets every session, you know, we're all talking about it's a nightmare of a test for them. But they'll get there eventually, but they are at least 6 weeks behind everybody else.
And Ferrari, you talked about race simulations there. Kimi said he wanted to get Kimi Raikkonen wanted to get a race simulation in today, but no sign of any action from the garage as yet.
Yeah, Kimi's been out doing some laps. They're in the garage at the moment. Stefano Domenicali, the Ferrari team boss, has arrived. But they were ultra reliable yesterday. 122 laps for Fernando Alonso. And really, it's going to be about finding a bit more performance, showing not only us, but the rest of the paddock where they are on performance. Because some doubts from Ferrari as to whether they're actually in amongst the Mercedes teams at the front of the grid, what will be the front of the grid, or actually they could be behind them. So we could have 4 Mercedes teams, McLaren, Mercedes, Force India and Williams at the top, and then Ferrari underneath. That's the worst case scenario for Ferrari. They wouldn't want that, because that means only qualifying just about in the top 10. They want to be right in there amongst the favoured Mercedes runners.
And just finally, you mentioned there that the big names are here now and Sebastian's back in the car, but what can we expect to see from these last 2 days? I mean, everyone wants to see who's got the performance, but Red Bull historically don't show their hand at testing. We have to wait to almost qualifying and even the race in Melbourne for that. So what can we expect to see from these final 2 days, and will people be pushing it to try and get in a quick lap?
teams will have a job sheet as long as your arm, probably both arms, as things that they want to get done before they go to the race. Really what they have to do at testing is what they can't do when they get to the racetrack. So when they get to the racetrack, they know that they can do some what we call performance runs. They can go out, make some setup changes to the car and see if it goes faster. What they can't do is run and run and run, do a practice race and see what breaks on the car first. They can't do that, of course, because they just haven't got the time or the tyres or the engine life. So that's what they're going to need to do, to want to do these last final days. Run and run and run, use the 8 hours that we've got of totally free track time and just see if they're reliable, and if they're not, what it is that's breaking, and make sure they fix that for the first race.
Thank you very much for joining me. When we came to this pit lane, it was very calm and still and not much action going on, and as luck would have it, the wind picks up and we get the Caterham Marcus Ericsson behind us, and then the Williams there with Felipe Massa in it, but plenty of action still to come, and it's what's going to be a fascinating final 2 days here in Bahrain.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you, Rachel. Well, the new Formula One season starts, of course, with the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. That is on March. OK, only 2 days left now of testing for the F1 teams before the first Grand Prix of the season. Let's head back to Bahrain and over to Rachel Brooks.
Well, welcome back to the Bahrain International Circuit. I'm here in the paddock now. I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Christian Horner, team principal at Red Bull. Christian, flying in for the last 2 days of this testing. What are the plans for today and tomorrow?
Well, obviously it's a final chance that we've got to try some components, particularly on reliability, before Melbourne. So it's an important 2 days, not just for us, but for all the teams, and we'll be trying to get through as much as we can.
Daniel got in a longer run, a longest run you've done so far yesterday, and 66 laps in total. Do you think you're near a race simulation? Could you get one in by the end of this week?
Well, we've only got 2 days left to do. I mean, Daniel had a much more positive day yesterday. He did long runs, short runs, and the car ran pretty reliably. So that was a step forward, which for the first time enabled us to start to look at performance. So still plenty to do, and we're definitely on the back foot, but we'll be pushing hard to catch up.
Yeah, how far behind do you think you are from where you'd want to be right now and from where you need to be?
Well, on the basis that we've done, this is the 10th day of testing, we're about 10 days behind, I reckon.
Well, in terms of then, I mean, that must be frustrating for everyone involved, frustrating for the drivers as well. We've heard these reports about Sebastian not being happy in Jerez, and the words a hissy fit were used. What's the truth of the matter? What did happen, or has anything been said?
It's complete and utter rubbish, so I don't know where on earth that's come from. But no, Sebastian, you know, he's fine. He understands that there's issues. He's totally supportive. He's trying to help the team where he can, and there's not been one raised voice, one bit of discontent. He's just got his head down, focusing on his stuff. You know, of course, he's got a huge amount of trust in the team, and we'll just get on with it.
There seems to be a consensus in the paddock that if you finish in Melbourne, finish the race, you'll be in the points. Is that a view you share right now?
Yes. Yeah, I think reliability is all the teams to a greater or lesser extent are seeing is an issue, and I think that you know, it's going to be a big challenge in Melbourne, but you can see some teams are better prepared than others, but it's a long season.
The teams that are better prepared, do you think it's been a bit of a trade-off this season between cooling and performance, particularly with your car?
Not really. I mean, cooling obviously is an issue, but you've got to run to understand where those heat issues are. So we had some cooling issues at the first test that we resolved coming into last week, and then we've been working, you know, hard with Renault to get on top of other issues.
And just finally from me, when you leave here tomorrow night, where would you like to be? There is an ideal, of course, but playing catch-up is very hard. So where would you like to be?
I think so long as we can get through a sensible programme today and tomorrow, then you know, at least we can take quite a bit of information into Melbourne. We've still got another 2 weeks before Melbourne, and for sure we'll be bringing, you know, more parts to Melbourne. So you know, it'd be great to just have another couple of days like we did yesterday.
Sorry, there is one final question. There has been some talk of a B-spec car maybe appearing for the start of the European season. Is that wide of the mark?
Yeah, I don't know where all this speculation comes from, but you know, we'll have an updated car, you know, as we have done every year, and that car will be evolved and developed at each Grand Prix, not just for the European season, but at each Grand Prix, you know, throughout the year. So there's no silver bullet in this game, and it's a matter of, you know, engineering solutions to engineering problems.
Christian, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christian Horner, Red Bull team principal, as they try to play catch-up. But the Mercedes also suffering reliability problems in the last couple of days. So, Christian talking about a silver bullet. No one seems to be bulletproof just yet.
Well, there are just 2 days left of testing before the F1 teams have to pack up their cars and prepare for the Australian Grand Prix. We can go live now to Rachel Brooks, who's at the circuit in Bahrain for us. Rachel, I know Red Bull have had some big problems during testing, haven't they? How has that affected their preparations, do you think?
Well, it's not been good at all, Kate. You can probably see how breezy it is here at the moment. Sand being blown over the track as we are out here in the desert right now, which is affecting, actually, a lot of the running. A lot of people finding that today. But Red Bull, in particular, not having a good day at all. I spoke to Christian Horner earlier on, their team principal, and he told me, he says they're 10 days behind. Well, that could now be 10 and a half days, because we're now at the lunch break here and everyone stops for half an hour and there are no cars on track. And sadly for Red Bull, they couldn't even get out this morning. Sebastian Vettel got out for one lap, and after 4 corners, the car stopped. He pulled over and the car was brought back to the garage on a low loader. And then the car went back into the garage there behind me, and Sebastian was seen inside the garage chatting to Christian Horner, and he was smiling and laughing. But there were reports that we heard yesterday that in Jerez, at the first test, Sebastian had got out of the car and thrown what was called a hissy fit at the state of the car, and said he didn't want to drive it until it had been improved, and that he was just not happy, and there were ructions within the team. So I put this to Christian Horner earlier, and I asked him, and I said, look, we've read these reports, we've heard these reports. Even on their own website yesterday, they were talking about those reports, and they didn't confirm or deny them as such. So I put it to Christian Horner today and asked him what really did happen, and if it was true that Sebastian had thrown, as was called, a hissy fit.
No, it's complete and utter rubbish, so I don't know where on earth that's come from. But no, Sebastian, you know, he's fine. He understands that there's issues. He's totally supportive. He's trying to help the team where he can, and there's not been one raised voice, one bit of discontent. He's just got his head down, focusing on his stuff. You know, of course, he's got a huge amount of trust in the team, and we'll just get on with it.
Because after the car came back on the low loader, we can show you pictures of the car coming back, but when the car came back on the low loader and went into that garage there behind me, they worked on it for a while and then they tried to get out again. But we walked into this pit lane as the car was pulling out again, and sadly for Red Bull and for Sebastian Vettel, that car was pushed back in again. He didn't even get to the end of the pit lane the second time he tried to get out today. And since then, the garage behind me there has been very, very quiet. So one of the guys came out and put some more stanchion posts around it, and if you can see, you can't get anywhere near it at the moment. They've put their barriers all the way around, which is unlike any of the other garages down here. They've just got them literally in front of the garage doors, and it's been really quiet in that garage behind me. Earlier on, music was pumping out, and as they worked on the car, but now it's very, very quiet inside that Red Bull garage right now.
What about the other drivers, Rachel? Who else has been out on the track this morning?
Well, everyone's been having a go, all the drivers who are in the cars today, of course, because the teams only get to run one car at testing, so the drivers take it in turns. Jenson Button's been out in the McLaren. He said yesterday that he thought they were further behind than they were. He wasn't overly impressed yesterday with the running, but they're trying some performance work today, some setup work, and he's been out a fair bit on track this morning. But Kimi Raikkonen is back in the Ferrari today. Now, Fernando Alonso yesterday put 122 laps in that Ferrari as he drove it around this circuit, and it was a pretty good day for Ferrari yesterday in terms of the long runs that they managed to do and in consistent running and reliability. Well, Kimi Raikkonen, we're hoping to repeat that today, although he's not had an awful lot of running so far this morning, so he'll struggle to match that number of laps today. But he obviously has replaced Felipe Massa in the team. He's the man top of the timesheets today in the Williams. The Williams has looked so reliable. Over 100 laps again yesterday for Felipe Massa, and he said he's had a really good time in the car. He's enjoyed it because the last test wasn't so great for him. He didn't get much running, but now the car seems great and he's enjoying himself. And they're able to do some performance and setup work in the Williams, which shows you how far ahead they are. Other teams like Red Bull can only dream of getting onto that stage at the moment. So good for Williams today. Massa top of the timesheets. And the Mercedes has been out. Nico Rosberg's in that today. They had a bit of a wait this morning because they had to change the engine. It was a precautionary measure, and it takes quite a while with these new power units this year to do that, but then he did get out on track. He was on a 20-lap run, but we had a red flag just before lunch, and he had to come in. The Marussia, Jules Bianchi, stopping out between turns 1 and 2 here. So everyone took an early lunch, but that Mercedes has been looking really good. No quick times on the board, but they're carrying what looks like a heavy fuel load today at the moment. So we'll hopefully see what happens with these times tomorrow when they really turn these engines up a little bit. We have noticed, I have to say, it's got much louder around these cars now these last 2 days as the teams turn up the engines and get ready for Melbourne.
OK, thanks very much, Rachel. Well, there are just 2 days left of testing before the F1 teams then have to pack up their cars and prepare for the Australian Grand Prix. We can go live now to Rachel Brooks at the circuit in Bahrain. Rachel, things haven't really improved for the world champions for Red Bull, have they? Just remind us of what has happened so far this morning, if you can.
Yeah, it's not been a good day for them at all. They were keen today. Sebastian Vettel's back in the car for the final 2 days here. They were keen to get some good running. Daniel Ricciardo had a fairly decent day yesterday, 66 laps in total, but around 20 laps of those in one consecutive run, which is good for them. It's the most they've done in one go, but unfortunately things today not going to plan at all. Sebastian went out after a slight delay this morning, and on his installation lap he made it around 4 corners before he stopped on track, and the car had to come back via a low loader, him getting a lift in a road car back to the Red Bull garage. The car was in the garage for quite some time after coming back on that low loader, and the mechanics worked away at it and sent him out again. But unfortunately this time he didn't even get as far as turn 4. This time he only got to the end of the pit lane, and he had to stop, and he got out of the car and he pushed the car back with the mechanics back to the Red Bull garage, and that's where it stayed, I'm afraid, up until now. And it looks like it could be another couple of hours yet until he gets out, which would leave him with only an hour and a half's running today.
Rachel, there's been some talk that these mechanical problems have had a bit of an impact on the relationships within the garage. What have Red Bull had to say about that?
Well, when Sebastian came back from that first breakdown, we were there and we filmed some shots, and we could see him talking to Christian Horner in the garage. Christian Horner, of course, the Red Bull team principal, and they were chatting, and he seemed to be quite happy. He was smiling and chatting away in the garage, but obviously since then he's had another breakdown. He's had no running this morning at all. But we spoke to Christian Horner earlier on today because there had been some reports in the media that after a day's running in Jerez, which was the first test in Spain, Sebastian had been annoyed and in the words of the Red Bull website, had thrown a hissy fit. That the speculation was he'd done that, and they were saying on the website they were making a joke of it. But, so we put it to Christian Horner this morning. We asked him and said, you know, is it true? Were there problems and are there ructions with Sebastian and the team?
It's complete and utter rubbish, so I don't know where on earth that's come from. But no, Sebastian, you know, he's fine. He understands that there's issues. He's totally supportive. He's trying to help the team where he can, and there's not been one raised voice, one bit of discontent. He's just got his head down, focusing on his stuff. You know, of course, he's got a huge amount of trust in the team, and we'll just get on with it.
Well, in that interview, Christian Horner also told us he thought Red Bull were 10 days behind in terms of testing. That's now 10.5 days and could be almost 11 days by the end of today. Difficult conditions for everyone today. As you can see, it's very, very windy here. I just got a face full of sand, and that's what the drivers are dealing with on track. So won't be ultimate peak performance today, but we've got one more day to find that out.
All right, one more day of testing. Rachel, thank you very much.
Now, Red Bull's problems have plunged to a new low after they failed to complete a single lap on the penultimate day of testing in Bahrain. 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel only managed 4 corners before the RB10 broke down, and admits reliability is a big problem with just 2 weeks to go until the first Grand Prix of the season.
If Sebastian Vettel's a noted Monty Python fan, looking on life's bright side has been a recent challenge. After a 2.5-hour wait to get on track, he lasted less than half a lap. His next attempt ended in the pit lane. It proved the final attempt, as the champions abandoned running for the day. They still seemed relaxed, but how far behind are they?
Things will get better once we get to Australia, but it's very difficult to, foresee what's going to happen. Obviously, we thought we'll be in a much better place also this week compared to last week. Hasn't really been the case.
Vettel did attend to some PR inadvertently, mucking in to push the stricken RB10, a riposte to reports he'd thrown a prima donna's hissy fit, having grown frustrated with his new car in Jerez.
Oh, it's complete and utter rubbish, so I don't know where on earth that's come from. But no, Sebastian, you know, he's fine. He understands that there's issues. He's totally supportive. He's trying to help the team where he can.
Is there a chance Formula One, initially at least in 2014, maybe Formula Mercedes? The McLaren Mercedes had another solid day, while the Williams Mercedes edged out the works team's car at the top of the timesheet. Although it's Nico Rosberg's title odds which have shortened more than anyone else's since testing began.
We're optimistic in general, yeah, but to say exactly where we are would not make sense, and I don't want to say that, and I don't want to guess also, because everybody is on different fuel levels and everything, and as we know, we just need to be careful with testing results.
Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen was a distant third quickest, 2.2 seconds off the pace. But if that time gap may have limited relevance given his track programme, Red Bull's lack of laps must be a grave concern. With just one day's testing before Melbourne, are the champions in crisis? Rachel Brooks, Sky Sports, Bahrain.